Wow, what can be said about Devon Achane? So crazy fast, uber athlete, produced in the SEC, but listed at 5'9", 185 pounds. I think that's a little bit generous. 4-star recruit out of high school, playing for Texas A&M. Kevin, do you think that the burst and elite high-end athletic traits are going to translate and allow him to get on the field?
Oh, we're gonna have to talk about this guy. I really like his. I love his speed. Like his speed. Like he already talked about. All of a sudden, like I don't know if you saw this. He recently posted like I'm gonna get the 4.2 and the 40. Can you imagine what he's gonna do if he hits 4.2 and the 40? People are gonna lose their damn minds. Like that's just what they're gonna do. And then I saw somebody underneath said, "I wish he would get the 195 instead," and it's completely true. Like I just he has track speed, but does he have the strength and the size to be able to withstand? Like I think it's so hard with these guys. Like in terms of like we've seen what the NFL has said. So like every year, like since you know who hurt me was Gainwell. So Kenneth Gainwell was almost 200 pounds when he came out of Memphis, and he was a good pass catching back. And you know he didn't play because of the COVID year and all that. And I was like, man, this kid's really good, and I'm all aboard like the Gainwell trend. I thought, hey, Gainwell is gonna buck the trend of sub 200 guys. Well, Gainwell didn't buck the trend of sub 200 guys. He just didn't. And in overtime, we've learned what the NFL thinks of guys like this. And so the question is he an outlier enough for you to take him? And I think that is kind of what you're going to have to decide when you're in your values and where you're at. So like he has a speed. He has burst and lateral agility, man. Like, and he has good lateral agility in traffic. He's actually not bad at the line of scrimmage. You'll see him make guys miss, and you'll see him kind of get to the next level sometimes. I think he has really good vision in the open field, and even at the line of scrimmage. Like, he's got good vision at any place that he's at on the field. So, like, from a pure running standpoint, he's one of the best pure runners in the class. Like, you have to give him that. And the one thing that he did this last year is he got over the Isaiah Spiller hump because Isaiah wasn't there, and he took the load. He had the most carries he ever had. He had 1,100 yards. He had those 8 touchdowns. But then again, he got hurt this year, so he had all those carries, and then he got injured. And I think that is like, okay, then he came back, though. I will tell you this. He came back his last game, and he didn't need to come back because A&M was awful this year. But he said, no, I'm going to come back, and he led them, and he had one of his best games of the year after coming back from an injury. So he's got the intangibles. He's got the heart. He's got the vision. He's got the size, or not size. He's got the speed. He just doesn't have the size. And I think to me, and some people will say it's a cop-out, but a guy like him, if you're drafting prior to the NFL draft, I wouldn't take him because it's too much of a risk. Like Anthony Richardson's the same way. Like if these guys that have too high of risks where you're like, they can really bottom me out and they're too high for me in my rookie drafts. If you draft before the NFL draft, I would just move on and get a safer floor guy. But if you're going to be normal and draft after the NFL draft, what I would do is I'm sitting and I'm waiting and I'm see if he gets, so there's some buzz about him getting second round draft capital. If Achane gets second round draft capital, then you should feel comfortable drafting him. Like that's how I would look at it. Or third round, like maybe fourth, depending on the landscape and depending on the value. But if he gets that second, third round, you're like, okay, so maybe the NFL is looking at him as being a weapon. And that's kind of how I look at those situations in terms of me. So like, and I try to do my analysis based on that. Okay, so if you're going to draft pre NFL draft, I limit the risk. If you're going to draft post NFL draft, okay, then let's see what the NFL thinks about these guys. Now, if you believe in Achane and you think, hey, this is my outlier guy, I don't mind risk, though. Like, if you're going to do that, I'm aboard. But I think his skill set, look for a team. So if you're waiting to see where he gets drafted, look for a team that does a wide zone scheme, something out there that it gives him that vision and his ability to kind of slip into the cracks and do those type of things. And one cut, so look for that. So look for those things out in space in a horizontally based offense that allows their backs to catch passes. Okay, something like that, not just dump offs, pass catching, those type of things. That's what I'm looking for at the NFL draft level, if he can do that. But again, the size is a legit concern.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of you saying he's one of the most complete backs. He's a really good natural runner. And I think the way he was played and utilized this last year, you saw a whole range, whether it be, inside zone duo type runs or get him out in space. He was utilized in all those different ways. I just don't know if the NFL is going to be able to say, right, here's 4 or 5 carries between the tackles. And I know that that's a very simplified way to view it, but I just don't know if they're going to trust his body type to be able to hold up. And yeah, we've seen some incredible fantasy seasons from guys like, whether it be, going back Duke Johnson or James White or players like that, where they've been fantastic as third down backs who get the occasional carry. But I don't know if that's enough that I want to be spending high draft capital in a rookie draft to go and get that type of guy, because the chances of them succeeding is pretty small. So yeah, I think he is probably the player, maybe in this entire draft class, that's more landing spot and draft capital dependent than anyone else. Because you look at someone like Kenny Nwangu, who got some hype when he was a third round pick, but actually he was a third round pick because they basically viewed him as a special teamer. And I worry that he's not a natural special teamer, but as soon as you're running 4-2s, they like running backs in that kind of kick return game. Could he be we're going to take him in the the third round to basically be a kick returner, a kind of change of pace back? And I just worry that he's never going to be more than that. I'd love it if he was, and I think that if he gets that round 2 draft capital, that would hint more towards that for me, and I think I'd probably be more comfortable biting the bullet. But yeah, I just worry that, I know size isn't everything, and I try not to buy into size being everything, whether it be wide receivers, but at the running back position, I'm a little bit more concerned that, what do we think he's going to be? 180, maybe 190 at the next, when he weighs in at the combine. I'm just a little bit concerned.
I would love if he got to 195, I would be like, oh, awesome. But I don't like, it is not easy. Like I laugh all the time. Like it's easier for me to gain weight, but some of these guys' frames, the way they are, and like the elite level athlete, they can't put on that much weight. Like they just can't do it. And it's not really, it's not something that we should expect from a lot of these guys. Like, what would you think? So I know this is your show, but I just wanted to ask, like, so he got mocked to the Broncos. How would you feel at a Broncos landing spot? Because Javonte's injured. And
yeah,
so,
I mean, I'd like that as from an NFL perspective, because I think that would be a really nice 1-2 punch him. But I'd be really concerned from a fantasy perspective, because I think they'd basically eat into each other, and it would probably be that neither of them are anything more than kind of RB2s. But I think it would be fascinating to see if he can weigh in at 195 and still run a 4.2, then I'm probably going to be all in. But I think that I don't know if he can get that weight and maintain that speed.
That's the big thing. And if he came out and he said he's going for that 4.2, I have a hard time thinking that means he's going to be 195. That means he's probably going to be 185 or whatever he's going to weigh in at, and he's just going to go for it and say, hey, speed is the way it's going to get me in. And that's a good point you brought up. I didn't even really think about that. Like he might get drafted a little higher and be that third round guy, but maybe the third round guy, like Nwangu, like those guys, and you're like, wait, he did get day 2, but that day 2 maybe is baked into like special teams, and that's going to hurt you a little bit. So yeah, that's a good point too, in terms of where he's at. But again, he's gotten mocked like second round multiple times that I've seen. Now, those are all come with a caveat. These guys are riders. They might not know necessarily where their guys are going. But I think from a pure speed, you can't, like, if you take a risk on him, I get it. Speed, his abilities, like I understand, like he's the second most riskiest pick probably in these, well, maybe third. Boute's probably second, first is Richardson. But if like you're looking at a chain based on skill and everything like there, like I don't mind missing on a guy like him if you have those extra seconds maybe, or something that you can kind of use and maneuver around.